These are some example problems from the practice workbook from chapter 5 section 4. So we're going to be using cross products to solve proportions today. So let's take a look at that first problem here. Well, we've got a ratio in which we need to find out what the value of s is in the denominator of that first ratio. So the way we're going to do that is we use these things called cross products. And so we're going to multiply the 24 by the 12. And so we'll go ahead and set that part up, 24 times by 12, and then we're going to end up multiplying the other two numbers that are diagonal from one another, the s and the 4. And we're going to set it equal to that, so s times by 4. So we go ahead and do some work there. And so we're going to end up having to multiply that 24 times by 12. So off to the side, you might write that out and multiply. We get an 8. And this makes 4, carry a 0, multiply, we get 4 and a 2. So we add that stuff up, and that leaves us with an 8, another 8, and a 2. So 288 is what we get there. And so we've got 288 equals this 4s. And so from that point, all we have to do is a division problem. So it's just pretty much multiplying the two numbers and dividing by the number that's diagonal from the variable. And that'll get you your answer. And so again, another part we have to do off to the side. So here we have 4 into that 288. So we see that 4 goes into 28 7 times evenly. It goes into 8 2 times. So that gives us our answer. So S equals 72. Well, let's see if we can come up with a different type of problem. It looks a little different. What looks different is that the variable's in a different spot. Here, it is on the top of this fraction. Well, it's pretty much done the same way, though. You multiply the numbers that are diagonal from each other. They call it cross products because when you circle these things, you see how it makes a cross. It makes an X. The two circles cross each other. And so we have 9 times by t, and then we set this equal to the cross products of the other one. So we've got 2 times by 54. And so from there, we go ahead and multiply out those numbers. So let's see what we get here. We get 9t, and then over here, we have to double 54. Well, if I double 50, I get 100. If I double 4, I get 8. So that makes 108. And then from there we need to do some division. So I'm going to divide by 9 on both sides. Now if you remember your 12s, you would know that 9 goes into 108 12 times. Now one little trick with 9s, dividing by 9s, is whenever you take the digits, you look at these digits, 1 plus 0 plus 8, see those add to make 9. The divisibility rule is if you sum the digits of the number, so 1 plus 0 plus 8 makes 9, then 9 goes into that number. So I know it goes in, and it does go in 12 times. Well, another example here. We've got a f, this time is our unknown, and it's in the different fraction. Well, it's pretty much done the same way, though. You're just taking the numbers that are diagonal from each other and multiplying them. So we go 17 times by f, and then we set that equal to the crosses of the other side. So we got the 34 times by the 7. So we're going to multiply those numbers. Well, from there, we go ahead and off to the side, I'm going to have to multiply 34 times by 7. So this makes 28, carry a 2, makes 21 plus 2 makes 23. So there's our number. So what we've got now is we've got this 17f equals 238. Well, from that point, all we have to do is do some division. Divide by 17, and we'll get our answer. So another part that we have to do off to the side. So 17 goes into 238. Let's see how many times. 17 goes into 23 one time. I got to do some subtraction here. Remember, you got to borrow from this 2. That changes to a 1. So 13 minus 7 makes 6. You bring down this 8. Well, let's see here. I know that 17 times 4 makes 28, so I'm pretty sure it's a 4. So 4 times 7 makes 8 at the end, and it makes 28, so I got to carry a 2. 4 times 1 makes 4, plus 2 makes 6. So yes, that does end up working out. So there's our answer. F equals 14. So there it is. So those are a majority of the problems. Then there are two problems down at the bottom of the page, 22 being one of them. And this one, these two are similar to the last two. This one is 22. It says 8 oranges cost $1. How much will 5 dozen oranges cost? Well, here's an example of where we use cross products. Cross products are a great way to solve problems because they're fairly quick. It's just a multiplication problem and division. Well, oftentimes we can write proportions to solve. Proportions are equal values. And so here it says 8 oranges cost $1. We can write a ratio to represent that. And so what we're going to do is when we set up a proportion, we want the same units in the same location typically. And it doesn't really matter how we set them up. Just got to be consistent with the way we do it. So let's say I do oranges on top and dollars on the bottom. See, this is one ratio. 8 oranges cost $1. If I do it this way, I've got to be consistent. I've got to make sure I have the number of oranges on top and the dollars on the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll set up our first one. 8 oranges cost $1. So that's going to be 8 over 1. Now we got to do the same thing for the next ratio. But we need the number of oranges. Let's see, it says there are 5 dozen oranges. Well, that doesn't mean there's 5 oranges. That means there's more than 5 oranges. 5 dozen, well, a dozen is 12. So we've got to multiply these two numbers. 5 times 12, and that's going to give us the number of oranges. That's 60 oranges. So 60 altogether. So 60 oranges, that goes on top. And it asks, how much does it cost? Well, we don't know how much it costs. So let's put a C for the cost. C goes in place of the cost, the dollars. Notice how the dollars are both on the bottom of the fraction, oranges are on top. And you could have this set up differently. As long as you're consistent, you'll end up getting the right answer. Well, from this point, we're going to go ahead and multiply these two numbers, 8 and C, end up making 8C. And then we're going to multiply 60 times by 1. Well, that's easy. That just makes 60. And so then we have one division problem to do. So here we're going to divide by 8 on both sides. So off to the side, I'm going to write down 8 goes into 60. Well, it doesn't go in evenly, but it does go in a certain number of times. 8 goes into 67 times, and that makes 56 when I do that multiplication. That leaves us with 4 left over. Now, since they want a cost, let's go ahead and change it to a decimal form. So we'll bring down a 0 and bring up that decimal point and do the division. 8 into 40 goes 5 times evenly. And so that does make 40 at the end. So we are done. So there it is. The cost is $7.50. So there it is. Well, one more problem. This is similar to number 23. And it talks about a recipe calls for 5 cups of milk to make 45 waffles. So there's our ratio, 5 cups of milk, 45 waffles. So let's set up our ratio that way, just like oranges per dollar. It's the same sort of thing, just different words. So cups over waffles. That's how we're going to set up our proportion. And it's going to equal cups over waffles. Now again, there are different ways to set these problems up, as long as you're consistent. I could have done waffles over cups, but then I'd have to do waffles over cups again. So as long as we're consistent, it'll end up working out. We could even do waffles over waffles, cups over cups, but you've just got to be consistent. So we are going to do cups over waffles, so we'll start with this one. 5 over 45 equals, and then we'll set up the next one. Well, how many cups? Oh, that's the unknown right there. Let's use C again for that. We don't know how many cups, but I know cups goes on top, are needed for 108 waffles. See, waffles again. That number goes on the bottom. And so all we're going to end up doing is doing the cross products, just like we had done before. So we're going to multiply the 5 times the 108. And then we're going to set that equal to the other one. So let's start with this one. 5 times 108. And this equals, well, we'll multiply the 45 and the c. We get 45c. So we go ahead and off to the side, maybe multiply those numbers. 108 times by 5. So that gives me a 40. And that gives me 0 and 4, make 4, and that gives me 5. So 540. And 540 equals 45c. And so we go ahead and do a division problem. We're going to divide by, just got to get that c in there, divide by 45. And here we go. We got to set up another problem. 45 into, and then we have 540. So it goes in there one time, and oops, that leaves me with 9 left over. So 90. How many times does 45 go into 90? Well, it goes in actually evenly. It's twice. That makes exactly 90. So it goes in 12 times. So there it is. C equals 12. So 12, what are we talking about here? Cups. So there is our answer. 12 cups for 108 waffles. Well, those are some of the problems you'll see on Chapter 5, Section 4 in the Practice Workbook.